before we start our class, may I request Edwin, sinarandang word of prayer.
Magsitayo po tayong lahat. Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Ama namin sumasalangit, maraming salamat, Lord, sa biyayang pinagkaloob mo sa amin. Naway bigyan mo po kami ng lakas at lakas ng loob para malampasan namin ang mga pagsubok na dumaan sa aming buhay. Naway sa araw na ito, Lord, pagpalain mo ang aming tagapagsalita ngayon, ang aming guro, at nang sa gadon ay maintindihan namin ang lahat ng mga paksa na kanyang gustong ibahagi sa amin. Ito po ay aming hinihiling sa ngalan ng aming Panginoong Hesus. Amen. Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Amen. Maraming salamat, Edwin. Okay, so it's good thing that even though we're still facing the pandemics, we just have to be in positive or positive state. So let's try to motivate ourselves that despite of everything, so we could be able to continue learning regarding learning out of these circumstances. And at this lesson, our competencies are our target that the students or you as a learners will be able to explain why there is a breakdown of communication and use various strategies in order to avoid communication breakdown. So that is our target for this afternoon. Okay, but before that, we're going to have a review regarding the topic that we discussed last day. So may I request, Edith?
Ay, ako dito nagtabi mo.
Yes, because you are talking over there at the back. Okay, will you please give me some various model of communication? Yes. Yes, because you are talking, that is why you are the one I call.
Okay. In linear communication, it is a one-way process because the message is just delivered by one person and I is not obligated to have feedback. And one example of it is Shannon. And one example of it is Shannon. In interactive, there is a two-way communication between the receiver and the sender, but the message is not simultaneously. And one example of it is SRAM model. And lastly is the transactional model, wherein the communication is dynamic, the feedback is very faster compared to interactive, and it is mostly used, for example, is when we have grouping in our class, the only barrier in it is the noise.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you for that. What are the three or what are the model of communication? One is the linear communication. What else? Or the SRAM model?
SRAM model.
Okay. Yeah, so that is our topic last day. And now today we're going to have the communication breakdown and how to or strategies on how to avoid the communication breakdown. So first is what we call the stereotype. Okay. Will you please read? Edit.
Bernadette.
Bernadette.
Stereotypes is a natural result of communication. Communication is the development of stereotypes, which are attitudes or judgments we make about people based not on personal experience but rather on what we have learned about them through communication. American journalist Walter Lippmann from 1884 to 1974 called them pictures in our heads. Through stereotypes, we categorize people, presume to standard their characteristics, and thus make sense of a complex world. Thus, they can enhance communication and relationships.
Okay, so when we say stereotype, it is a natural result of communication. So what do you mean by that natural result of communication? So it is the development of stereotype which are attitude or judgment. So all of us have that kind of type of attitude. We make about people based not on personal experience, but rather on what we have learned about them through communication. So in a simple, sa simpleng salita, that stereotype, we're going to judge the person which is based on what we have heard to others through communicating with our friends. Sa simpleng salita po, yan ay, kumbaga, makonsider din natin na may iba communication, judgment, through, yun bang chismis, or a simple communication with our friends. Diba? That is stereotype. So, American journalist with Walter Lippmann called the picture in our heads. Okay, diba? If the person that we're going to encounter is kanang, what do you mean by that? You can say that in your head that that person or that kind of person is this one. It is because we heard that to others. If we encounter that person, we're going to have that picture in our head. Did you get or in our minds? Okay, did you get my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes. So, we categorize people for sure to understand their characteristic and thus make sense of the complex world. So thus, they can enhance communication and relationship. They can also enhance. That person is this kind, based on what you have heard through communication. Okay? So the next one is this. Stereotype. Will you please read Melchor?
Stereotypes, which can be positive or negative, usually are associated with our attitudes about people and ideas, both our own and others.
Okay. So that stereotype that you are going to have, it can be positive or negative. Okay. Can be positive or negative, usually are associated with our attitudes. So it depends upon our attitudes. Diba? People and ideas, both our own and others. Because we cannot deny the fact that we have our own perception. Yes, perception, attitudes, or interpretation with other people. Okay? The next one is,
What is the topic?
the problem with this stereotype is this, is that particularly when they negatively prejudge others, they make it difficult to correctly interpret information we see and hear. That is the negative one. Why? We cannot easily correct our mistakes. Diba? What we have speak to others, it cannot be easily maayo. Or what do you mean by that? Okay. Diba? Because, as what they have said, that your words is like a sword. Kung ano yung nasabi mo, masama o mabuti, nakaka-apekto yun sa iyong pinagsabihan. Okay? Rather than accepting information at face value and interpreting the other in a favorable or neutral. Okay? Sana ganito tayo, neutral lang yung iniisip. Positive and negative side, diba? Okay, negative stereotype led us to presume the worst in others. Okay? Neutral. Okay, sana neutral tayo. Let us to presume the worst in others. That is the most negative one in stereotyping. Why? Because we are talking about the others into negative way. Okay? The next one is, this is an example of communication breakdown. Yun na. When stereotyping is negative, the communication breakdown is present. Why? What is this communication breakdown? It is a phenomenon in which the normal process of communication is thwarted. Okay? Thwarted because inappropriate and erroneous interpretation are given to incoming information. Yun. Okay?
Nag-reject na siya.
Oh, nag-prejudge na siya. You interpret the words in your own understanding. Not based on the story or the true story. Diba? Okay? Oh, we use stereotype every day. Is it true or false?
Yes.
When you are going to buy something, then you can encounter when you encounter your friend, can you give a stereotype of communication that he or she give to others? Kaya bang nara ka sa kilid niya, pagkahuman, nag-istorya sila dito, what will be your thinking? Okay? It can be, or you can use that stereotyping. For example, in personal, you can use stereotyping in personal. Ang personal na kayo mo ba? Okay? Family. How can you use the stereotyping in family situation? Si ate yun ang gipangga, or si manghod yun, kay manghod yun siya. Diba? Gipabulan yun si manghod. Yung kay manghod to, manghunan siya, mabulang na manggugasap ta. Okay, stereotyping. Social context. Ano yung social context? In terms of socialization, what are the information that we get in socialization? What will be the context of that communication? Baka ng pinaka, kailangan kayo ito pwede ma-encounter regarding this in social. Okay, socialization I mean. Stereotype play a role in parents' decision. Ito na. Parents' decision about their children's playmates. Even I sometimes in my child, ayaw pakigula anak, kay nana na siya. Diba? Ayaw pakigula anak. Or dito ka pakigula ani nga bata. Kay gimpin siya, kan siya hugaw. That is stereotyping. Diba? Which is the fact that children nowadays can be clean or unclean, not clean. Diba? Dirty. That's it. Stereotyping likewise plays a public role such as diplomatic relationship between nations or the ethnic profiling. Ito tayo, minsan, sa ethnic profiling that law enforcement agencies use to identify who might be committing a crime. Okay, so there are lots. The next one is, what are the barriers to effective communication? Will you please read, Sharon? What are the barriers to effective communication?
The barriers to effective communications are: number 1, process barriers; number 2, physical barriers; number 3, semantic barriers; and last is psychosocial barriers.
Okay. So number 1 is the process barriers. What do you mean by these process barriers? How will you able to understand or how will you able to process the communication? Okay. Muna ginayon nila na, diba niya kasabot, uy, namin naman akong iyon. What is the process? Diba? That you are able to have the stereotyping in terms of processing. So that is one. Okay. So the next one is the physical barriers or barriers to effective communication. So in this process, how will you going to have that effective communication in a process? That you are going to process the communication properly. That you are going to give the right information to the receiver. If you are the sender. Okay? The physical barriers. You cannot judge easily the person who are talking. Physically. Diba? Because it can also affect. Okay? What is important is the information that you can get, not the physical that you have seen in that person. Another one is the semantic barriers. Okay, what do you mean by the semantic? The semantic is how you are able to pronounce, how you are able to deliver. Because sometimes we can give or we can deliver the words incorrectly, the pronunciation, the intonation. Okay, that is. Next is the psychosocial barriers. What do you mean by the psychosocial? psychologically, and socialization. Okay? So these are, if you are going to practice this effectively and use this effectively, then the communication is also effective. Okay? The next one is how to communicate effectively. You are going to connect, to listen, to communicate, and to speak. You just need to connect the words or the information into the right way. To listen. Listen to what you have heard so that you can give the information correctly. Communicate according to the situation. Then speak. Speak maybe lightly or kanang the tone or the way it's of speaking. Okay? Sometimes in us, communication in this speaking, most especially if the surroundings or your group, there are kanang barriers that you are going to kanang understand, because there are some group that you cannot avoid, that they will not accept the way you speak, diba? So you need also to try that one, or to see that is for that your communication is effective. Then, communication strategies are techniques of coping with difficulties in communicating in an imperfectly known second language. Okay, so in communication strategies, you need to cope the techniques coping with difficulties in communicating, because this second language that we are using is not our first. So therefore, we need to study, we need to practice. Yan. Next one is, okay, what are the responsibilities of a sender? So the sender's responsibilities, the several communication theories, according to Cheney et al., have learned to 10 commandments of good communication, which are particularly applicable to the sender. So these commandments, together with the basic understanding of the communication process, should provide a good foundation for developing and maintaining an effective set of interpersonal communication. So that is for the sender's responsibilities. Okay. It is also need to clarify their ideas before communicating. Okay, you need to clarify your ideas para the listener will get what you have or what will you going to say. So, need to examine the true purpose of each communication. What will be the purpose of that communication or communicating? Then, need to consider the total physical and human setting. Okay, who are the person that you are going to talk? Or the person? Need to consult with others when appropriate in planning communication. Kaya nga sometimes if we are going to communicate with with our principal or the other person, we need to have the planning. Kaya sometimes mudas maglang storya, na ba? So, in terms of communication, para maging effective siya, or the sender's responsibilities, you need to see to it that the receiver will understand the way you talk. Okay? Next, need to be mindful while communicating of the overtones as well as the basic content of the message. Then, you also need to take the opportunity when it arises to convey something or help or value to the receiver. Then, need to follow up their communication. The next one is, the sender's responsibilities also need to communicate for tomorrow as well as today. They need to be sure that their actions support their communication. And need to seek not only to be understood, but to understand. Be a good listener. Okay? You as sender, you need also to become a good listener. The next one is the receiver's responsibilities. So what are those? Communication depends on the ability not only to send, okay, ability pa rin pala to, but also to receive messages. So the ability to listen effectively greatly enhances the communication process. But many are not good listeners. Tama ba? We are not good listeners, or not all of us are good listeners. Effective listening skills can be developed. So, however, summarize following are the rules for good listening. So when someone is talking, then you will going to summarize that effectively, then you are a good listener. Okay. This one. The receiver's responsibility is you need to stop talking. Okay? Put the talker at ease. Then show a talker that you want to listen. Batik-atik lang kung tanga gusto ka mamina, gusto lagi ka po'y nakapaminaw. Okay? Remove distraction. So that is. Okay, emphasize with talkers, hold your temper, because sometimes if you are the receiver, then the sender, lalong-lalo na yung discussion or clarification, ka na bang mag-usay gani. So you need to, as a receiver, you need to hold your temper. So go easy on argument and criticism, and you can ask some questions. Okay. So this one, for the summary of this lesson, we are going to have an activity. Okay. So first is you are going to give a situation of stereotyping. Okay. Explain why the situation is stereotyping and what is your strategies to avoid the communication breakdown. Okay. Who can give one example of a situation having a stereotyping? Konti lang. Wala mo.
For example,
Okay. Kung ano yung kaya ng mga lalaki, kaya rin ng mga babae. Okay, so what communication that can avoid in that kanang thinking? Because we cannot deny the fact that they always say that male, ano yun? Man, stronger than women or
Women.
woman. Okay, that is stereotyping. In terms of communication, strategies to avoid the communication breakdown. What is the strategies that you're going to have in that communication breakdown? Maybe to show what is the to show what can woman can do that also man can do. Okay, so that the communication will be good.
fair.
Okay, will be fair. Okay. What are the responsibilities of the sender and receiver in communication? To address the problem of communication breakdown. Yes? What are the responsibilities of the sender and then the receiver in communication to address the problem of communication breakdown?
The sender,
Their responsibilities.
the sender must be careful with his words.
Yes. The sender
Must be
will
careful
must be careful with their
words.
words. Okay. So that we cannot. Okay, yes. Okay, next. The performance task. Okay, this performance task, I will give this as your assignment. Okay? So each group, for group 1 will be boys and for group 2 will be girls. I'm not using
Yay!
the stereotyping type, but I will group you in that way. Okay? Okay, each group are asked to portray at least 2 practical situations. Okay? Why communication fails and reason for it. So thereafter, propose strategies to avoid communication breakdown based on that situation. Okay, you are going to perform that tomorrow. Okay, that's all for today. Any question, clarification? None, ma'am. Okay, that's very good. That's good.
Picture taking sa